In modern watchmaking, complexity is easy. Factories can build turbulins and machines can produce thousands of movements, but perfection, that's much harder. In a small Swiss workshop, one man spent decades proving that point with a watch called the Philippe Dufour Simplicity, one of the most respected watches ever created, despite having almost no complications. At the center of this story is Philippe Dufour, a man who never set out to disrupt the watch industry, and yet ended up redefining its highest standard. Dufour comes from the old world of Swiss watchmaking, where patience was taught before speed, and respect for craft mattered more than recognition. He was trained not to impress, but to endure. Every lesson reinforced the same idea: a watch is not something you produce, it is something you prove. Dufour represents a philosophy that is quietly vanishing. To him, a watch is not a commercial object or a vehicle for innovation, it is a moral exercise. Each component reflects the values of the person who made it. Sloppy finishing is not just bad workmanship. It is a lack of integrity. Shortcuts are not efficiency, they are failure. This is why his work feels so different. It is not trying to be admired, it is daring you to look closely. There is no signature flourish meant to grab attention. No dramatic complication to distract the eye. His watches are calm, restrained, almost humble at first glance. And that is precisely the trap. The longer you look, the more you realize that nothing is accidental. Every line is intentional. Every surface has been touched, reconsidered, and perfected by human hands. The confidence is absolute because it has nothing to prove. In a modern industry driven by volume, deadlines, and spectacle, Philippe Dufour stands still. He does not follow trends because trends do not survive time. His work is quiet because it doesn't need to speak. It simply exists, finished to such a degree that the only challenge left to the viewer is simple: find a flaw. When the Simplicity was introduced in the year 2000, it wasn't a response to market demand. It was a quiet refusal of it. At a time when haute horology was chasing ever more complex mechanisms, bigger complications, and louder designs, Philippe Dufour chose to walk in the opposite direction. He stripped everything away, not to make less, but to reveal more. The Simplicity was a declaration that true mastery isn't proven by adding layers, but by perfecting the fundamentals. The idea sounds almost naive. Create the ultimate three-hand manual-wind watch. No complications to hide behind, no mechanical theatrics to distract the eye, just hours, minutes, and seconds. But this simplicity is actually the hardest challenge in watchmaking. When the design is reduced to its bare essence, every mistake becomes visible, every imperfection is amplified. The watch must stand entirely on proportion, finishing, and harmony. There is nowhere to cheat. This is where the Simplicity becomes something more than a watch. Each piece functions like a talisman, a physical distillation of decades spent at the bench. Every decision reflects accumulated experience: how sharp an angle should be, how softly a surface should glow, how restraint can be more powerful than complexity. It is not designed to impress instantly, but to reward understanding over time. The watch doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself slowly to those willing to look closely. And because this philosophy cannot be rushed or replicated, scarcity is inevitable. The Simplicity is made entirely by one man, at a pace dictated by human limits rather than production targets. Only around 15 to 18 watches can be completed in a year. Over 2 decades, just 206 pieces were created in the original run, not because demand was low, but because compromise was never an option. This extreme scarcity is not a marketing tactic, it is the natural consequence of conviction. The Simplicity exists in such small numbers because it is built the only way its creator believes is honest. And that belief, more than gold, more than rarity, is what gives the watch its almost mythic weight. At first glance, the Simplicity may appear to belong entirely to the past, but its creation begins firmly in the present. The raw components are initially cut using modern, computer-assisted precision. This ensures absolute accuracy, perfect geometry, and mechanical reliability. But for Philippe Dufour, this is where modernity ends. Precision alone does not create soul. What transforms these parts into haute horology happens only by hand. The watch earns its artisanal status not through machines, but through time, judgment, and touch. Every surface is manually finished. Every edge is shaped, softened, and polished using techniques passed down through generations. Dufour relies on vintage tools, some dating back to the 1930s, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. These tools allow a level of control and sensitivity that modern equipment simply cannot replicate. They respond to pressure, not programming. They obey the hand, not an algorithm. This approach is slow by design. There is no way to rush black polishing on steel, no shortcut to creating perfect interior angles, no machine capable of deciding when a surface has reached its final, flawless state. Each part is repeatedly disassembled, refined, and reassembled until it meets a standard defined by experience rather than tolerance levels. The process is closer to sculpture than manufacturing. The movement itself reflects this philosophy completely. A 30mm caliber housed within a modest 34 or 37mm case, it is not engineered for speed of assembly or production efficiency. It is built for longevity, serviceability, and visual harmony. Components are generously proportioned, thoughtfully spaced, and designed to be admired as much as they are to function. Nothing is optimized for cost. Nothing is optimized for volume. In an industry increasingly shaped by automation and throughput, this refusal to compromise is almost radical. The simplicity is not faster because it doesn't need to be. It is not easier to build because ease was never the goal. What matters is that every watch leaving the bench is capable of surviving decades, both mechanically and aesthetically, without ever needing to explain itself. Collectors do not pursue this watch for recognition. In fact, to almost everyone outside a small inner circle, it looks quietly ordinary. No bold branding, no visual drama, no immediate signal of value. And that is exactly the point. Those who seek the simplicity are not chasing status, they are chasing truth. Truth in craft, truth in intention, truth in what watchmaking looks like when nothing interferes with the work itself. The simplicity answers a question few are willing to ask, and even fewer are willing to live with. What happens when craftsmanship is allowed to exist without deadlines, marketing pressure, or commercial compromise? The answer is something deeply unsettling to the modern industry. The result is pure, honest, almost uncomfortable in its restraint. It does not beg to be admired, it quietly waits for understanding. In theory, nothing about the simplicity is impossible to reproduce. The materials exist, the tools exist, the techniques are documented, and yet any attempt to recreate it today would fall short. Not because of technical limitations, but because the mindset is gone. This watch does not come from a production philosophy. It comes from a lifetime of discipline, restraint, and uncompromising personal standards. The simplicity exists at a precise intersection. Mastery refined over decades, restraint enforced at every decision, and integrity that refuses to bend under external pressure. Remove any one of these and the watch collapses into imitation. That intersection at this moment in time has only one occupant, Philippe Dufour. The Philippe Dufour Simplicity is not the greatest watch in the world because of what it does. It keeps time, nothing more. It earns its place because of what it refuses to do. It refuses to chase innovation for its own sake. It refuses to compromise quality for efficiency. It refuses to scale beyond the limits of one man's hands, and that final refusal is what makes it immortal. The simplicity cannot be expanded, systemized, or passed down like a formula. It exists only where the maker exists. When those hands stop, the watch becomes something that belongs entirely to history. That is why it can only be built by one man, and why, once gone, it may never truly exist again.